Hey Wire Monkeys, welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Cabling. If you're hanging your shingle, starting your own low voltage business, you've been good at doing technician stuff, but now you're ready to do your own company, and you've been struggling with sales, I've got the show for you.
Welcome to Let's Talk Cabling, the award-winning podcast where knowledge is power and the low voltage industry connects. Hosted by Chuck Bowser, RCDD, we're here to empower installers, designers, and industry pros with the tips, stories, and best practices you need to stay ahead. From copper to fiber, standards to innovation, this is the show that keeps you plugged into success. So grab your tools, turn up the volume, and let's talk cabling.
Welcome to the show where we tackle the tough questions submitted by installers, estimators, project managers, designers, customers, even IT personnel. We are connecting at the human level so that we can connect the world. If you're watching this show on YouTube, would you mind hitting the bell button and the subscribe button to be notified when new content is being produced? If you're listening to us on one of the audio podcast platforms, would you mind giving us a 5-star rating? Those simple little steps helps us take on the algorithm so we can educate, encourage, and enrich the lives of people in the ICT industry. Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What are you doing? You know you get to ask your favorite RCDD questions on installation, design, certification, credentialing, career path. I'll even tell you how to cook barbecue if you ask me. You ask me anything you want. But I can't help it. Chuck, I'm driving my truck on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. I don't want to get in an accident. I record them, and you can watch them at your convenience. So there's no excuse not to be listening to them. Also, while this show is free and will always remain free, if you find value in this content, would you click on that QR code right there? You can buy me a cup of coffee. You can even schedule a 15-minute one-on-one call with me, after hours, of course. And you can even buy Amazon t-shirts to help support the show. And if you donate enough, you might even get a Let's Talk Cabling Challenge coin. Brand spanking new. I only have 25 of them, so they're going to go quick. Just saying, right now. Just saying. So as I said, I spent a lot of time talking to technicians in classes, talking to technicians in social media platforms, and direct messages and questions and LinkedIn. And probably one of the most common questions I get that's non-technical is, Chuck, how do I sell? I've started my own company. Where do I find leads? How do I talk to people? I'm good at terminating single mode fiber, but when I get in front of a customer, I start getting sweaty palms, and so I start stuttering, and I don't know what to do. Okay, and you know, even if you're not having your own low voltage company, this is a good show for you. You want me to tell you why? Because everybody is a salesperson. Everybody is a salesperson. I said it louder for the people in the back because I can hear, but Chuck, I'm just a technician. I'm just pulling cable. You know what? When the customer thinks of your company, they're not thinking of the owner. They're not thinking of the project manager. They're thinking of the person who spends the most time in front of them, which is you, the technician. So everybody is a salesperson. That's why we're so big on professionalism in this industry. Now, again, I am a master of many trades, but sales is not one of them. Okay, I've done every position in this industry except for sales. All right, now, but I know a lot of people in the industry. I know this is actually the third author I've had on this program. So I got somebody who wrote a book on selling, who not only is an author on selling, he's a peer and a close friend of mine. Tim Carroll, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing?
Good. Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate you having me on. Absolutely appreciate it.
Not a problem. It's always a pleasure to have a friend on the show. So for the people who may not know who you are, can you just give us the 30-second Tim Carroll spiel?
Yeah, appreciate it, Chuck. It's been great working with you. I've been in this industry now for probably 25 years. I've worked for a couple different manufacturers. Worked for a system integrator, a regional system integrator, running their sales for them as well. Just a guy that grew up in Kentucky and spent some time in Texas, out in North Texas, and then slowly migrated my way back to North Carolina. And I've been here for, probably 30 years now. So
all great states, by the way. All great states. I've lived in Texas. I lived in Texas for a short while. I did a project in Tennessee. I didn't live in Tennessee, but did a project there. Kentucky's not too far from there. My wife and I are looking at, maybe when we retire, places in Kentucky or maybe even Tennessee, just to get out of the Florida heat, get away from the humidity and stuff like that, right? So,
that's right.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask, before we get started, let me ask you this question, because it's probably one I get asked quite often. What makes sales different in our industry when you compare them to other industries?
Well, I think one of the things that makes our sales in our area different is it's kind of complicated versus a person that's selling maybe software straight to a business. So it's just business to business. There's not the channel that you're dealing with. And so at any given time, from a manufacturer standpoint, right, we could be dealing with a consultant, we could be dealing with an architect to drive the spec. We're dealing obviously with installers and integrators that are vital to our installation. But then you have the pricing through distribution and through the channel, and then it may be dictated from an end user. So I see there's hardly any time that two deals are ever the same, and I think that adds a degree of complexity to what we're selling and what we're doing versus some other areas.
I think that would also, at least for me, that would attract me because I get bored really easily. If yeah, I can only terminate so many Category 6 jacks.
Right.
Sooner or later, I'm gonna start being okay. What else can I do? What else can I do
Right.
above and beyond this? So the fact that no two sales are alike, that would be something I think would attract people like me. And as you were saying, I didn't think about that, but you're right because there was I don't mention this, I don't admit to this in public too often, but there was a short period of time, and when I say short, I mean less than 6 months, where when I quit my job, my low voltage job in Mississippi, and I moved back to Florida because I wanted to be close to my kids, and that was right at the tail end of the what was it when the market dropped? What was the early 2000s, something like that?
Right.
Where the market just kind of went flat. I could not find a job in low voltage to save my soul. But you know what? The bill collectors keep coming. The kids still want to have food. So I took a job, and it only lasted 6 months, as a car salesman
Ah,
at a Mazda dealership in Tampa, Florida, courtesy Mazda. And I didn't flourish because in that position you almost have to be willing to lie and not even have a soul, right?
Right.
But you're right, when you start mentioning all the different facets, all the different people that you could be talking to, like the architects and the GC and the customer and the end user and maybe even equipment manufacturers. It made me think right away back at my short 6-month career in selling. The only person I had to talk with was the person in front of me,
right.
and maybe their spouse if their spouse wasn't there, right? So you're right. It's a lot more complex. I never even really thought about that before. And it could be. Let me ask you this: how long did it take you when you came to this industry to get to the point where you felt like you were comfortable enough to actually make enough sales to live off of?
Well, I say it all the time. I still don't know what I'm doing, and I've been in this business for 30 years. I mean, from a technical standpoint, goodness gracious, the installers know so much more than I do. But it took, oh gosh, I would think when I first jumped into sales at the integrator level, it took probably 6 months to 9 months to figure out just what deals and how they kind of come together, who's driving the opportunity, where sometimes again you may be a sub to an electrical, sometimes you may be directly with the end user, but it probably took a good 6 months to just figure out the lay of the land of how the deals go together. And I had come out of a diverse background to where it was business to business. I'd also done some retail sales in the boat business as well, to where you're getting immediate feedback, immediate reaction. That's another one of the complications to our business is you may be working on something today and you don't get immediate feedback. It may take a year, 2 years before you actually see something that you're working on actually come to be in a purchase order.
I've told this story before. I'll give you the abbreviated version. When I worked for Hinkles McCoy in the D.C. area, my boss literally did sales calls on this individual for a government agency. I don't want to say who it was, for 5 years before we even got the opportunity to do the first bid. And then we once we got that bid, obviously we got awarded the contract, and I think they're still working on that contract actually. But yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
It's a marathon.
And there's a big difference between winning a project, perhaps going and doing a service call, MAC work, and then developing an account. Each one leads to the next, right? A service call, going out and running one drop for some wireless access or something, leads to perhaps getting on the list to do a project, and then the project can lead to developing an account. But there is a different mindset that goes along with account development versus just trying to go win a project.
I love how you said account development, because I guess I've been saying that my entire career, but I never used them big fancy words. I used the cable puller words, relationship. Right?
Yeah,
Relationship. And because I tell technicians all the time, look, again, you heard me say at the beginning of this thing, the customer typically thinks of you, the technician who's in front of them. And I've actually had times where when I've left one company to go to another company, once the customers from the old company used to use me, found me, I went to a new company, they went and found out where I worked, so they start using the new company. That's a relationship.
Yes.
If you can harness that into sales, that's legendary. Let me ask you this, because I mentioned you were an author. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write that book.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I was just thinking about when you're saying that, a common theme that when I was with a contractor, used to say, sales may sell the first job, but the technician is what sells the second job and keeps you in the account. And that is vitally important to remember. So, but yeah, thanks for asking about the book. It's called Sales by the Book. It's a faith-based book. It's a biblical suggestions for the sales professional. And kind of how this came about was, I had worked in a variety of different industries, everything from selling boats to point of sale systems. I've had 2 rep firms where we sold point of sale systems, and then some marketing tools to boat, RV, and automobile dealerships. And then I've been, of course, in this business in our industry for 25, 30 years now with different manufacturers. So I've always kind of come from a sales perspective, and I see life through a sales eyes. But I started reading through the Bible, and I started seeing things that I thought was good to live by. These are good principles. But then I started looking, I'm like, buried within that's a sales principle. Not only is it good to live by, but it's a sales principle within there. And so that's how I kind of started putting, and it's basically written in a devotional style of devotions that apply to a sales kind of application, but it's also just good things to live by as well.
Is there one off the top of your head that you can think of, that one of your favorite biblical verses that translates great to sales?
Well, I tell you, 2 very simple ones would be Matthew 5:37, where it says, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no." I think at the most basic, simplest form, that is one of the key things. Is just you mentioned about there's a perception out there of sales in some other industries. But if you live by that rule of let your yes be yes and no be no, it kind of takes care of things. The other is the golden rule in Matthew 7:12, where it says, doing to others as you'd have done to you.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a pretty simple thing. When you're treating customers the way you would want to be treated, you're probably going to have some success.
Let me ask you this, because you said you've been doing sales in the low voltage industry for quite a few years. Who were your mentors or pivotal moments?
That's a good question. So I think just getting started in the industry, I knew nothing about the cabling industry. And I had a cousin that was a controller for a regional integrator, and he asked me to come and head up the sales. And so that was a very key pivotal point of kind of getting into the industry. When I spent some times at the different manufacturers that I've been with, there's been key people that have served a lot. Some of those you've had on here, probably you mentioned Carol Oliver, Kerry Higbee, Val McGuire, all those folks in our businesses has served as helping kind of shape and form some of my approaches to the business.
Yeah, and this industry is it's not difficult to break into. It just takes showing up and being willing to learn. But we have our own lingo, we have our own acronyms, and we have acronyms, multiple acronyms that mean the exact same thing, and it's one of the hardest things to really master in industry. And I know this wasn't you per se, but I know I've dealt with salesperson people in the past in the industry, and where large companies are horrible about buying somebody, who's a good salesperson selling widgets at some other company. Well, you might be good at selling widgets, and there are a lot of principles that cross over, but when you throw in that extra layer of the language and the lingo, because we can people in the low voltage industry can spot a fake from
Right.
a mile away, and a lot of it has to do with how what lingo they use, what acronyms they use, and how they treat. But you're right. I love the golden rule. If you treat other people the way that that you would want to be treated, you're gonna get along fine in this industry. You truly are.
A quick word from the folks who help make this show possible. Are you ready to boost your fiber game? Then check out GoFar Fiber Training School, where you'll learn from the best. Lee Renfro, RCDD, Bixie Tech, and 3-time winner of the Bixie Cable Skills Challenge himself. Whether you're pulling your first strand or prepping for certification, GoFar delivers hands-on, real-world training that gets you job site ready. Don't just go far. Lee will take you all the way. Sign up today and start leveling up your career. Visit GoFar on LinkedIn or click on the link in the description below.
Let's dive deep into some of your strategies, right? Some of your tools, maybe some of your experiences, right? What's one of the most common mistakes that you see ICT professionals making when they're trying to sell?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, Chuck, when a technician, kind of makes that transition into being like a sales person or a business owner. First of all, they probably think that there's some magical formula that if you say these words, it's going to produce sales, and that's just not the case, right? You got to show up, be there, do what you say you're going to be. I think it starts with integrity. You just have to have integrity and doing what you say you're going to do. I talk a lot about your personal brand. Who are you in the marketplace? That means a lot. And when you're first starting out, you have to start building your personal brand. Yes, you may be selling for this contractor, or you may be selling for this manufacturer, for this distributor, but at the end of the day, it's your personal brand, who you are in the marketplace that people are trusting, and whether they're going to buy something from you or not. So
Yeah, it's a small industry. It truly is. And when I say small, I mean I've literally have quit working for companies and got hired on somewhere else, and then somebody who I used to work for before got hired as my boss.
Right.
It is a small industry. It truly is. And all you have is your reputation. And I'm glad you said branding, because especially in today's environment with technicians doing posts on Instagram and LinkedIn and all the other social media platforms, it is a brand, and you really got to think carefully about what you say or what you put up on social media, because it's all about, you don't want to tarnish an image. You don't want to offend's not the right word. Maybe you know the word. You don't want to alienate somebody who's a potential client just because you have a strong opinion about, I don't know, XYZ issue. And that's one thing you'll never hear on this podcast. You'll never hear me talk politics, or I'll talk about barbecue. I'll certainly tell you pork barbecue is better than beef barbecue any day of the week.
You may be starting fighting words. Being from North Carolina, there's debates on Eastern and Western barbecue. Take that conversation into Memphis, or take that conversation into Kansas, and you might have another fight on your hands. Right?
Absolutely. That's kind of what got me going on barbecue. I did a project in Memphis, and I fell in love with barbecue.
Oh,
started doing it from there. So there you go. So let me ask you this: what sales strategies or frameworks do you swear by?
I think a couple of mistakes, if I can start it there, that a lot of people will make is when they finally get a meeting with a customer, they'd immediately want to go into product dump. They want to immediately start talking product when they don't even have the needs uncovered. So it's vitally important, even if you get invited to come in and do a presentation, or you get asked for a price. there's a natural reaction for us that we want to immediately provide a quote or provide a bid or provide our product or provide our fix, but we haven't really gone through the discovery phase. And so we have to take that time to actually go through discovery phase and start asking questions. If you start asking questions, most of the time the customer will lead you to what they're the most interested in.
Right. And you know, I learned this from one of my mentors. You know, first you learn how to talk to people.
Right.
And that's it. You know, that sounds difficult, but it's really super easy. And I practice this all the time at Bixie conferences, right? You know, if I see you walking around, I see you wearing a Harley Davidson shirt. Hey, what do you ride, man?
Yeah.
Get them talking about something they like, and then let the conversation just kind of evolve. And then if it gets, you might get to the point where you might say, hey, who do you work for? What do you do? But you're right. If you go in there saying, hey, look, yeah, man, we got the best single mode fiber, and they don't have any fiber on their project, their pain point is, you know, power over Ethernet for like wireless access points and stuff. They're going to be tone deaf to you, and they're not going to listen to what the heck you're saying. And you know, I think it's you're right. I think I could see a lot of people coming right out of doing their own stuff, starting hanging their own shingle. They feel like they're in a new arena. They're suffering from what does my wife call it? My wife does manager training. She's got a name for it, where you don't feel qualified to talk to that person, right?
Right.
And so they want to just overload them with, like you said, oh yeah, well, you know, single mode this, multi mode that, blah blah blah. We hit them with a lot of irrelevant information when the customer's like, why is this guy talking to me about this? We don't even have fiber here in the building.
Right. Right. You know?
And I think that's a great point. What was another one? You said you had a couple of them?
Oh, well, that's probably the biggest thing is you know, taking that time up on the front end of going through the discovery phase and trying to uncover and asking the questions and really just kind of what's keeping this customer up at night? What are they trying to solve? What problems are you trying to solve? I think that's where the crossroads comes to where sales become a service, is that at the end of the day, you're just trying to solve a problem that a customer has. And most of the time, they're not going to make a change unless they've had some kind of a pain point. So whether if they're changing technologies, so that means that they need to be moving from Cat 6 to 6A, you know, the 6A to a shielded solution. But you've got to uncover what their pain points are and what problems that they're having. I always like to ask a question: what keeps them up at night? You know, what's your biggest concern right now? And typically they'll kind of ask you that. The other thing that I've had success with is taking the pressure off the customer of where you ask them the question of, like, you know, I know that perhaps that you're already set with your fiber products. What is something that we can talk about? Mm-hmm. And they'll typically say, well, you know, tell me about your, you know, copper cable, or tell me about your high-speed assemblies or something. And that'll kind of lead you to where they want to go. And definitely getting into what's on their roadmap for emerging technologies. What directions are they heading with their infrastructure, so that you can kind of come in and be the industry expert and the subject matter expert with them.
I think what you just described, and you're the sales expert, not me, but I think what you just described is called consultative selling.
Yes, right.
Yeah, instead of value-based selling, and that's where a lot of low voltage people just hanging their shingles out get tripped up. Is the customer says, they give them a price, the customer says, well, yeah, I got something to do better, and they immediately want to drop their price. Well, then maybe that's not a fit. You know, it's got to be a mutually beneficial relationship for both you and the customer. And if the customer doesn't see that, then maybe you expend your energy on trying to find other customers, right?
Let's take a short break. Are you trying to reach the technicians, project managers, and decision makers of the ICT industry? Then why aren't you advertising on Let's Talk Cabling? With over 150,000 impressions a month across podcasts, YouTube, and social media, this isn't just a show, it's the go-to resource for the low voltage industry. We spotlight the tools, training, and technology shaping the future of structured cabling. And your brand could be front and center. Don't just get noticed, get trusted. Email Chuck at advertising@letstalkcabling.com and let's connect your brand to the right audience today.
How important is it to build those long-term relationships instead of pushing the products?
Oh, absolutely. I have customers that I have worked with for years that we didn't necessarily sell something to them in the very beginning, but we built that relationship. They become a trust. All of a sudden, there got to be scenarios and situations where they were calling me when they were in need of something or had a question about something. So I became kind of their go-to to help them solve problems or help them get answers, even if it wasn't my product, and then eventually end up selling something to them. And the relationships then they grew to where they knew that they could count on me to at least point them in the right direction and tell them the truth.
You had mentioned that we function in a highly technical industry, and we do, and it's tough selling it. Let me ask your opinion. Do you think a salesperson should have a credential like an RCDD or tech?
Well, it certainly helps. I think one of the questions that may come up is from a transition. I think you started this talking about when a technician transitions into being a business owner. One of the biggest advantages that they have is that they do possess that technical knowledge. And so I think it's a great advantage when they move into the business owner role. And most end users and customers enjoy and appreciate being able to work with somebody that has the technical knowledge,
Right.
and they're the business owner, that they know they can make a decision right there. And so I've never been one that has had a tremendous technical knowledge, but I've always tried to be the person that knows the person that has the technical knowledge and knows where to get the answer, and being honest with the customer that I don't know, I don't have the answer, but I know who has the answer, and I will go find that and bring them back to you.
I knew there was a reason I liked you. 'Cause I'm the same way. I tell people all the time, they see because I'm an RCDD or because of the podcast or whatever, they automatically assume I'm an expert. And I tell people all the time, I am not an expert. I know a lot, but I'm not an expert. But I'll be the first to tell you if I don't know something, and I'll be the first to tell you, hey, look, I don't know the answer to that, but I can get you the answer for that. Just give me a day or so, and I'll get you the
Right,
answer.
right.
And I think that buys a lot more credibility with customers than if you just try to, just make up some answer. Because I've had students do this. Let me know if you ever had a customer do this. I've had students ask me questions in classrooms that after I answered it for them, I figured out that they already knew the answer. They were just testing me to see if I knew the answer.
Right.
Is that something you find with customers?
Yeah, I think sometimes they will maybe want to test you a little bit, and they may ask a leading question that they already know the answer to. And then if you just try to make something up and mislead them, then you've blown your trust with that customer, and they're just going to kind of dismiss you. So I write in my book about what I consider the 4 anchors of sales, and that is persistence, patience, integrity, and attitude. And I think those are kind of the 4 anchors that makes a successful sales rep. There's a persistence factor because when they say no just means I haven't gone through the discovery phase close enough to figure out what the no is for. Is it price? Is it the quality? Is it the performance? What is it? And then patience. They're absolutely, in our industry, very rarely when you call on a customer or when you respond to an RFP or provide a bid, there's a patience factor that goes along with waiting, versus selling a car where it's typically instant gratification of they're going to buy or they're not going to buy, right? And then integrity, everything is the foundation with integrity, and then having the right attitude, am I here to serve the customer? So
for the low voltage installer who just started his own company, how can they collaborate with technical teams? People to get the information they need.
Well, I think first of all, whichever manufacturer they're working with is going to have application engineers. They're going to have product managers. They're going to have, technical people on staff. Obviously, there's webinars, there's seminars, there's podcasts like yours. And so I think just reaching out to the network of people that they're working with will help lead them to the technical knowledge. Always jumping in on emerging technology forums and seeing what is out there that is new that they need to be talking about is vital.
And that's I'm glad you pulled that up, or said that, because I tell people, because I function in those areas with the technicians, in the social media area where they're just starting to do their sales, and somebody say, well, where do you get your cable from? I get it from Amazon. Yeah, good luck in calling Amazon and asking them to help you design that data center.
Right.
Good luck in calling Amazon to do the return, or having to deal with the loss, the financial loss, because you bought CCA cabling. Good luck with that, right? That's why it's always good to deal with, reputable manufacturers, because they're going to have the technical teams and the back people, the back of the stage people, to really help you with your issues, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about what skills should an ICT professional develop if they really want to start getting into sales, knowing that they're coming out of technical, and they know they got to do this whole sales thing, right? What skills should they really work on developing?
Well, I think listening to what the customer wants and needs, asking questions, having good. I think just a natural curiosity goes a long way. Just having a curiosity of what this customer's needs are. That perhaps we're working in all kinds of different vertical markets, and just having a natural curiosity of what how do you do things. I tell brand new sales reps all the time, one of the biggest things that they have going for them is the fact that they're brand new, and
Yes.
customers like to be the experts,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so take advantage of that. You have a window of time to where you don't have to be the expert. Ask that customer, why did you make that decision? Why did you use that? Why do you do these things? And customers love that. They love to talk about that stuff,
Yep. And that's solid. That's solid advice right there. And in that conversation, you might discover what their pain points are. And then when you confer with your sales mentor or your sales supervisor, there's a potential way to do some selling there, right?
Yeah.
So I love how you said earlier, sales gets you the first job, the technician gets you the second job, right? So how
Yeah.
can the technician shift their mindset from being a technician to being a trusted advisor?
I think it's just a matter of shifting from they already have the technical knowledge. They know how things get installed. And so, again, there's not a magical formula. It's just having the natural curiosity and being able to, I think probably the biggest challenge that I see a technician turned sales rep or technician turned owner is, at some point you do have to ask for the business. You have to lead to the business. And I think a lot of technicians turned to sales would feel like that's being pushy. They feel like that's being like your stereotypical sales rep, and it's just not. You're leading that customer to a point of making a decision, and at some point you have to ask them for the business. So, and being able to ask them for referrals. The best.
Right. If you don't ask, you don't ask, the answer's always no.
That's right.
It's
And when they ask and the answer is no, again, just means that we haven't gone through the discovery points of what is the pain point and why is it a no? Is it the price? Is it the quality? Is it the
right?
Is there some other line?
Yeah. I ask people all the time, after I get done teaching a class, and it's kind of salesy, but it's not really salesy. But I ask all the time, what's one thing I can do to make this class 10% better?
Yeah, absolutely.
Be on that constant growth path, right? What advice would you give somebody who's looking to get into ICT sales today? What first steps?
Well, first steps, that's a great question. I think building some of your knowledge, you've got to understand how deals work, how the industry is laid out, who's making the decisions, those types of things. So you got to kind of get that baseline of understanding the channel, understanding the way the business goes together, especially if you're coming out of a business to business type of a environment, because again, you've got so many different layers to the distributors, the contractors, the manufacturers, the architects, the consultants, all those different layers, end users, who's making those decisions. So you got to kind of learn the lay of that, and then from there, you got to go to work. You've got to start making the calls and getting in some networking events and starting to uncover where opportunities are.
I love how you said you got to make the calls. You got to attend the networking events. I loved how you didn't say that you pick up the local construction sales book and start calling on stuff that's being built in your area.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I see a lot of technicians say that. They go, where are you finding your leads? And I go, there's a name for it. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a book that literally will list all the construction projects going on in your area
Yes.
and sizes and all that stuff. But the problem with that book is we don't typically work for the general contractors. We work for the end users. And by the time it makes it to that book, that deal for the low voltage project has already been done.
Right. Right.
So,
One of the most simplest things that a low voltage contractor can do, though, is a lot of our business falls under the electrical contractor. We're a sub to electrical contractor. At the very simplest place, you could start reaching out to all the electrical contractors that are in your area and just ask them to be on their bid list. And so that will at least start some dialogue. And from there, we want to get into relationships and negotiated type of work. But at the very minimum, that will start getting some activities going from that standpoint. So,
and electricians, generally speaking, don't like doing low voltage work. They rather focus on the high voltage stuff.
right.
They'd be more than happy to subcontract it out and let somebody deal with them small little cables and not have to deal with the headaches.
Right. Right.
That's a good thing. Let me ask you about this cold calling.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on cold calling?
Ooh, that's at some point, every sales rep has to do some type of cold calling, but that needs to probably be a smaller percentage of how they're going about their business. The best business that you can get is warm referrals, is somebody that you've worked with. If I was starting out a new cabling contracting business today, I would probably first start out and think, who is all the customers that I've done work for in the past? That would be the very first thing I'd start with. That's where I'd start with the calls. Then I'd start thinking, who is at that business that has maybe moved to another company?
Yeah.
And that would be another set of layers of where I would start calling. That would be at the very bottom of like basics of where I would start.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point you have to start getting into cold calling, but that becomes a little bit more complicated because you had
I think by far the better method is go to the trade events, right?
Yes.
And practice your people skills, talking to people and starting conversations. Don't try to sell them right out of just have a conversation with them.
Yes.
And then maybe at some point, hey, mind if I get your business card? Because you never know later on who you might need or whatever. And that doesn't have to be a Bixie conference. It could be a Bixie conference, but I mean, they do. Annixter and Gray Bar do these small little events all the time, and just there's another content creator. What's his show? It's the 360 Electrician, and
Okay.
he just did a video the other day where he was at some event where they had a booth. But the event was really, I don't know what the event was about, but I know the event, they had HVAC contractors there and ceiling contractors there. So you got to know all of them just from being at that event.
Right.
And those are opportunities because they might get, the HVAC people might come across a project where they might need to have some cabling done. And hey, I know a guy. I met a guy at an event.
Right. Some of the best networking reps that I've collaborated with have been in the office furniture business. They tend to know of every project that's coming and they know about it early.
Yeah, 'cause
And
you got to order that stuff way in advance.
way in advance. So expanding your network outside of just manufacturers or distributors in our business, but commercial carpets, the furniture sales reps, those are good people to network with. Real estate management companies, the CBREs, the Jones Lang LaSalle's, some of those companies, they have projects going on all the time, and so it takes effort, but that's going to be relationship building, and that where they ultimately get to where they trust you. And things have changed, but they haven't changed so much to where people buy from people they like.
That, right there, that, yes.
Right.
They would much rather buy from somebody they know, somebody they have a relationship with, than somebody they don't know.
Right. Absolutely.
What words of encouragement do you have somebody who's going to be intimidated by sales or the sales process?
Well, I think it's just, if you go back again to the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have done to you. If you kind of lead with that and lead with passion, lead with integrity, lead with those types of things, the sales will come. But you have to kind of, the worst thing you can do is start out from the very beginning. It seems like we've been saying this over and over and over again, but if you're starting out and building your personal brand, the worst thing to start out is violating trust, violating those types of things. So you got to lead with passion, lead with integrity.
Yeah. One of the things I think that separates sales from all the others, you have to have thick skin. You have to be not get personally offended or get your feelings hurt when you hear the word no. How do you deal with rejection? What's a good tip for that?
Right. Well, again, you're not taking no personally. No is really just another way of saying not yet. And so you have to go back through discovery and kind of figure out what their needs are as well. And, one of the things is the power of a story is when you've solved problems for somebody else, then you use the power of a story of like, this is how, we had a client just like yours. This is what their situation was. Here's what we did to solve it. Here's what the outcome was. The power of a story goes a long way when you're trying to build that rapport and build that relationship.
Tim, if somebody wants to get in touch with you or buy a copy of your book, where can they find you or find your book?
Probably the easiest thing from getting in touch with me is you can find me on LinkedIn. So just go on LinkedIn and connect with me. Feel free to shoot me a note through LinkedIn. As far as finding the book, it's available on Amazon. Sales by the Book is the title, and Sales by the Book, probably. And then
hold that back up again. I'm gonna make a thumbnail out of that. But make sure I can see your face though. Make sure I can see your face. There you go.
I don't know. Yeah, there you go.
That'll work.
All right.
I'll make a thumbnail out of that.
Perfect. But Barnes & Noble online and Amazon, you can find both of those. Find it on there. So,
Tim, I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and helping some people out today. Thanks for coming on.
Chuck, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Cabling, the award-winning podcast where knowledge is power and the low-voltage industry connects. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your crew. Got questions or ideas for the show? Chuck wants to hear from you. Stay connected, stay informed, and always aim for excellence. Until next time, keep those cables clean, your standards high, and your future bright. Let's talk cabling, empowering the industry one connection at a time.